Good evening. Happy May, everybody, or end of May.
Woohoo!
Welcome back to Hoops HT. Uh, in the heart of the college baseball season, I guess. Uh,
And lacrosse.
and lacrosse. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by our full Brady Bunch style panel here. Over there, we got David Griggs. We got Matt
Woohoo!
Zukowski. Right below me is John Stalika. On one side, we got Joby Fortson. We got John Titel. Did I get everybody? I think I did. But this is our May Sessions podcast, we call it, the first of our monthly off-season podcasts. And we've got a bunch of things we want to get to tonight. And I think, David, though, before we get into any of the things, you had something you want to update us on, right?
We're another minute closer to the season. Woo-hoo-hoo! It's counting down.
It's 170 days away still, David.
Well, we're another minute closer.
Okay. All right. Well, we're 1 minute closer to the season. We're still a long way away. We want to start with some news and notes, though, actually. And the biggest offseason news so far in terms of some of the teams was the move that's now been finalized, Wichita State off to the American Athletic Conference for next season. Let me throw that over to you, Tytel. What do you think about Wichita State going out of the MVC, and is the American really the right place for them, or could they've maybe even done better than that?
Wow. Strong.
Tytel? Oh, sorry. Were you there? Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was just asking you about Wichita State, whether you think that is a good move for the program, getting out of the MVC.
It's almost here. It's almost here. It's counting down.
David,
we're
I'm
another
asking
minute
questions.
closer.
Turn off the screen, David.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's a bad move. I mean, it'll give them exposure. It'll give them competition against teams like UConn. It'll give them, and Cincinnati, sorry, John, it'll give them a chance to recruit because they can say instead of playing against the Midwestern teams, you can play against these big national teams. I'm a big fan of ain't broke, don't fix, but I don't know how much money they were offered. So good move, but I kind of like them where they were, frankly.
All right. Well, Stalika, actually, we just heard today that CBS, with the Big Ten tournament being a week earlier to be in Madison Square Garden next year, CBS is going to be broadcasting nationally the American Conference semifinals and championship game next year in the slots that the Big Ten had been in. I think, is it true that CBS has actually requested that they'll only do
It's almost here. We're another minute closer.
No, David.
We're another minute closer to the season. Woo-hoo-hoo! The countdown continues.
Are you
We're
done,
going to
David?
need a video mute button for him.
Slick, what I was trying to ask you before David rudely interrupted us was whether or not, at this point, the CBS actually officially requesting that Cincinnati, UConn, and Wichita State have to be in the semifinals of that tournament if they're going to put it on national TV.
Well, I don't think you want to have Tulane or East Carolina as part of the semifinals. I mean, let's not forget a couple of years ago where Tulane and I think it was Memphis were crashing the party, but Houston is also another up-and-comer that should probably be on the verge of making the NCAA tournament next year. So hopefully they would be a nice addition for the American in their one-off deal with CBS.
Yeah, and I think it is
It's almost here. We are counting down. Again, we're another minute.
And David's been muted now. I can't get that image off the screen, but we're not listening to his nonsense anymore. Matt, let me throw this over to you, though. There was every time you have a major conference move, we do have some bit of a fallout. And the next step of the fallout was the Missouri Valley Conference has now invited Valpo to join them. What do you think about that as a move?
I think it's a great move for the Valley. They're in a bad situation, the best they could have done. I mean, frankly, Valpo should have come in to replace Creighton a couple of years ago. Loyola did instead. But now they get Valpo, one of the top non-power conferences programs in the Midwest, consistently good over a series of coaches now. And I think Matt Lennox can continue that tradition there at Valpo. And I expect them to be right in the top 2 or 3 of the Valley every year.
I agree with you, and David, I hate to ask you a question, but because I am going to unmute you to do this, but the Horizon League, there may be some fallout there because I think there's an issue with they don't have enough teams to even host baseball anymore. Is that right? Or at least have a bid?
Yeah, they currently this would knock them down to 6 members with baseball, which means they would lose their automatic bid. It's the same thing they went through the last time when Butler left, and they kind of hustled to get Valpo in, which was a good addition. So they would either need to add an affiliate member for baseball or another full member. And the question is, who's out there? I mean, IUPUI, IPFW, both sort of in the Horizon League footprint. Both in decent-sized markets, but is in terms of venues and facilities, do they fit? What about and there's been some chatter about Bellarmine, who's a Div 2 powerhouse, was in the Final Four of the Div 2 tournament this year, and they have 22 sports, so they wouldn't have to add any. Would they make good sense? Would that be a good move? I think it would be fantastic for Bellarmine. If they ever did want to move, they're probably not going to get an opportunity better than this. But the Horizon League, I mean, they are going to look to add someone, as I understand it.
Okay, well, that's obviously something probably going to be too late for next season now for the Horizon League, which I'm not that certain what that would mean in terms of baseball for next year for them.
I'm really not either. I don't know if they would need a waiver. I don't know.
Joby, do you know? Because you follow some of these other Olympic sports a little closer than some of the rest of us.
I hate to plead ignorance, Chad, but I'm going to have to on that one.
So,
No, I like to chime in because I would be.
The most important Olympic sport right now is tennis.
Yes, we will give you congratulations to your Who's that won the men's tennis national championship today. So congratulations to Virginia. I'm sorry, Salika, you had a comment on it?
I was going to say, I believe the Summit League has 6 teams for baseball, so I don't know if they have a probationary bid or whether they're just playing regular season, but I guess they would not have an automatic bid, so I don't necessarily know how that would go. But I think another thing we didn't mention as far as the Missouri Valley goes, Murray State and Milwaukee and even Nebraska, Omaha were other candidates that were considered but ultimately weren't invited.
Yeah, and my understanding with Murray State at least is the Ohio Valley has some exit penalties that were really complicating things on that front.
There was Murray State wanted in, but I guess what would have become of Murray State's football program? They could have joined the Missouri Valley Football Conference, but I think they're at 9 or 10 teams already. It was getting pretty crowded. Murray State, I think, would have been a really good pick, but I know you guys were talking about it earlier as I was celebrating the countdown, but I think Valpo's a great pick. They're a natural rival for Loyola. It kind of delivers probably a little bit more of that market, and they can kind of be successful in there. I guess my question, again, to back it up, which we can do in May, we're very disorganized, where is the Valley in terms of importance and relevance in college basketball now that they've lost both Creighton and Wichita State?
Well, that depends on how important you feel teams like Illinois State are, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like 11th or 12th maybe in the pecking order now. I mean, obviously the Power 6 leagues, the American, like Poly's still the Mountain West. Oh, yeah, the A-10. In the WCC, as long as the Zags and now St. Mary's are rolling, the Valley's probably right after that, but that's just 10 teams there automatically behind, I think, without much thought.
Yeah.
Notice how Matt slipped in the Power 6?
I'll tell you what. Let's move to another topic here. Let's move a little away from men's tennis and football and baseball and over to actually back to basketball. And one of the big things that we are seeing, and I think tomorrow is May 24th is the final deadline for players that did not sign with an agent that did list themselves in the NBA draft can pull back and return to college. And we still have a nice handful of players that are still in that undecided range. And Matt, I know you follow this closely. Is there anything that you're really looking for among key players for tomorrow that still haven't decided one way or the other yet?
I guess the two I'm looking for the biggest in their big programs are Hamidou Diallo in Kentucky and Tony Bradley in Carolina. And both of those are looking to go the opposite way that I thought, where I thought in the end Bradley was going to stay with Carolina, not go pro. And I thought Diallo was gone the minute that Kentucky signed Kevin Knox, another small forward. But now it's looking like Diallo is coming back, and you might have rotation, or what was that gimmick that Calipari did a few years ago, part 2, of like the rotation of like 10 guys.
The blue and the white team.
Yeah, whatever that is,
Platoon.
like the platoon. Yeah, there you go, the platoon. And then
Well, I think Calipari just said that if Diallo went to the NBA draft and was a lottery pick, he would retire immediately. So, not that I don't think he's going to barely be the first round if he even went, and probably looking at a second round pick anyhow.
he was a guy I could have believed anywhere from the end of the lottery to the middle of the second round. Like, it takes just one team, and it'd be 6'5", 6'6" with great athleticism and pretty good speed, and not a ton of skill, but a little bit there that could be developed. But I think he's better off in college, and like I said, let Calipari decide who plays and who doesn't. But Bradley, man, that would leave Carolina woefully thin on the front court. I think otherwise they could probably contend for a repeat.
Well, Tytel, you are our NBA draft expert as well. I think you already posted your first mock draft on the site about a week ago or so. What are your thoughts on these last few guys that are undecided, such as Bradley, Diallo, or a guy like Caleb Swanigan from Purdue?
So Bradley is a good player. Diallo has a great vertical leap, and that's all that I can confirm about him. Swanigan's the key. Like, he's literally good enough to put Purdue in the top 25 or kick them right out, because he is a double-double machine. And with all these other guys leaving, there's not going to be a lot of competition to guard him. Indiana lost a big guy in Thomas Bryant. Michigan State has Miles Bridges coming back, but lost other guys. Like, the Big Ten could be his again. So I think he's going to be a huge factor to the Big Ten future for the season ahead.
Is there anybody else that you're looking at that maybe has decided to come back or has decided to go pro that surprised you?
A little. So I have a buddy who assumed Raleigh Alkins was gone from Arizona, because I think at the NBA Combine he was like leading his group in scoring. Thankfully for all the Wildcat fans, he's coming back. Trier's back. They bring in DeAndre Ayton, the number 1 overall recruit, the 7-footer from out west. So a ton of great pieces in place. As we all know, Sean Miller, great in the summer in recruiting, being the Final Four. So we'll see. But the future looks bright yet again, thanks to guys like Alkins coming back to Arizona.
Joby, how about some I want to get your thoughts on Bradley, because I know you're such a North Carolina fan.
I mean, I definitely look at the ACC. I think Bradley would be making a mistake for a lot of the reasons stated. The ACC last year, he was a rebounding machine as a part-time player. I mean, he was not playing as much as most of the season as people like Meeks. And this time he'd be the man getting, and Matt was mentioning off screen, 30-plus minutes a game. I mean, I think he'd have a chance to lead the country in rebounding. And he has enough skill and strength inside to where he'd be a mid to high double-digit scorer. He'd have a shot at ACC Player of the Year, even maybe, and would be a key cog for making Carolina have a shot at a repeat. Without him, Carolina definitely takes a hit. It goes without saying. But more importantly, he takes a hit. If he were to come back and accomplish what I just listed off, didn't I just kind of describe a lottery pick? I don't know if he's going to be a lottery pick this year. I'm not the draft expert. But I mean, if he doesn't go in the lottery, I think he's making a big mistake, because he would go next year.
I don't think he's not even a guaranteed first rounder.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm looking at a list right now of of just ranking just the underclassmen, so it doesn't even include any seniors on it, and they're ranking him 41st in the nation. So
that's just silly. I mean, I really believe he in Carolina, give him another year under Roy. It would be. I think he is that raw player who could really blossom. I mean, he definitely. I'll be honest, if I was an NBA team and I saw him at 40, I'd grab him in a heartbeat because of that potential. I wouldn't waste a lottery pick on him right now. But I think he has that potential. He just need another year of seasoning and being a go-to player for a prominent team.
Well, think about a couple players at least one player that did decide to come back. Sleek, I got to go to you, Xavier. Got a little bit of good news for your team for next year, correct?
Yep, and I guess you're not talking about Kareem Canner, who's actually going to be a graduate transfer from
Let's talk about both of them.
Wisconsin Green Bay. Yeah, the first one is actually, I think, a center, played for the Phoenix and got his undergrad there, and he'll get to play one season at Xavier next year in a role somewhat similar to what Rashid Gaston had filled the previous year. But I guess the big news that just came down a couple hours ago is Trayvon Blewett is going to be coming back for his senior season.
Well, what do you think? Well, let me get your prediction right now, Stalika. How good is that going to make your Xavier team next year?
I think since it's going to be an odd year, we had discussed this off the air. They'll probably have a good regular season, but they seem to be pretty hit and miss in the tournament. So I can't guarantee they'll make another deep run, but they'll certainly be well positioned, assuming they can also stay off the police blotter, which was not the easiest thing to do last offseason.
Matt, I know we spoke about this before we went on the air. Also, just want to quickly mention Texas, where I believe that Andrew Jones is coming back. At least that's what I've heard. He's going to pull out of the NBA draft. I'm pretty high on them next year with this.
Oh yeah, I was high on them last year. That turned out to be a dud, but no, I'm right back with you. I'm getting on that horse, and it wouldn't stun me if they're second or third in the Big 12. I mean, I think they got the point guard there missing in Matt Coleman. You have Jones back who could do a little bit of playmaking at the off guard slot, and now you got your enforcer down low at Mo Bamba, who with a 7'9" wingspan is going to erase anything near the rim. So those three and the other returnings and recruits, you've got the makings, I think, of a top 20-ish team, maybe like between 20 and 25.
And a Final Four team too, right, David?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Top 20-ish into the Final Four.
But David, anybody else that's in the news here that you surprised you one way or the other? I didn't get your thoughts on this yet.
Not real. Well, I'm just not really surprised anymore. I'm not surprised when players should definitely not go and they decide to go and then end up with nothing. And I'm not at all surprised when players should definitely go or have the opportunity to go and end up coming back. So nothing shocks me anymore.
I think the one that's going to be the big faller is going to be Melo Trimble, who I just mentioned. Titel, would you agree with me there?
Sure, I think that sounds reasonable.
You don't think he's going to be a top 10 pick then?
I do not.
Okay.
Well, it depends on how many guys you're picking in the top 10.
Okay. Anyhow, let's go on to one other. Well, David, you brought this up actually. One of the points you want to discuss today, given that we're in May, actually this being a odd-numbered year, we're going to be getting some more significant rule changes, and we'll probably have a podcast about those coming up the next couple of months when those things get finalized. But one point that you've brought up a couple of times before, and we want to talk about it, whether this is a good idea at all, is the idea that maybe we should have some type of games during an off-season in college basketball like they do in some other sports?
Yes, it's what you would call in other sports, baseball, the soccers, volleyball, just about all of them except men's and women's basketball, a non-championship season. And what that is you're allowed, it depends, I think in baseball it's either 13 or 15.
I thought non-championship season was a discussion of all of Rutgers seasons.
Those two, those as well. But anyway, it's basically just an off-season season. Like in baseball, it's either 13 or 15 games you're allowed to play in the fall. Soccer, their championship is in the fall, but in the spring they play 5 or 6 games. I would like to see either a 5 or 6 game non-championship season in basketball, either over the summer. And I realize that might not be entirely practical because not everyone is in classes, but the reality is in basketball, just about all of them are. So either in the summer or in the fall, and the rules should be the same as they are for other sports. You're allowed 5 or 6 games. You're not allowed to fly. You're not allowed to miss any class. So you're looking at bus trips typically on the weekends. I don't think you're allowed to charge for admission. I don't know if that's a rule, but I know almost no one does, or no one does that I know of.
Well, these would be exhibition games? They would not count?
Yeah, essentially they are exhibition games. Technically they are not. They are considered non-championship games, but yes, they're exhibition games. To answer your question,
I mean, they wouldn't be rated by the committee when they.
No, not at all.
Okay.
But this would not include the foreign trips you're allowed to take once every 4 years.
Correct. Those would not be included.
Okay, because I was going to say that is out there right now, but it's not an every year thing. It's every 4 years.
Right. And you
think
can
Duke
play
is
other
taking a trip.
schools. You can play. One of the things that you see typically in some of the other sports, they'll play, like in baseball, for instance, a lot of schools like to play the junior colleges of players that they're recruiting, which may kind of be an end around. But you might – I think you would get to see some intriguing games. I think it would be better for the players. I think they would start the season a little more sharper. It's a lot more fun than just playing against yourself all the time. And why not? Like, if you just look in Ohio, for instance, you're allowed to play 6 games. There's about 20 teams that would kind of be fun to see them toss it up and play a game.
So in other words, you don't want to wait another 3 years for a Greg Marshall meltdown during an exhibition trip. Is that what you're saying, Puppet?
No, I would like to see that every year.
And David, Ohio State would still travel like 5 states over to avoid any.
And they can't fly, and they need to can't miss
all
class.
night
But yeah.
They can make it to Buffalo and to Pittsburgh, I think so.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. The Ohio State probably still wouldn't. But what do you guys think? I mean, I realize that for basketball, that might sound a little non-conventional, but over the whole landscape of college athletics, it's actually rather normal, and you almost wonder why basketball doesn't do it. I get why football doesn't do it, although they sort of do. There is some talk, although I don't think they'll ever change it just because things change so slow, of getting to play a spring game against another school if you choose. But I guess instead of should basketball do this, I guess my question is, well, why don't they? Everybody else does.
Well, let me take a shot at it first, and I'll throw it over to everyone else. But, David, I don't think if it's a game that has no impact on the championship,
Yeah.
I mean, teams struggle to get any type of anybody caring about games in November that do matter. You're talking about games in September that don't matter.
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to care, quite honestly. I think
Well, the players would. We would. We would.
well, there's about 6 people that would be watching those games. They're all on this podcast right now.
Right. That's who watches the soccer and baseball games.
Right. And I mean, it's actually very valuable. I've seen, I particularly at UVA, lacrosse is a big deal. That's when you do your
false,
Western swing. And actually, David, there are exceptions because I know in lacrosse, the big deal is to go to Colorado. That's how Denver became good in lacrosse, is because all these Eastern teams like Syracuse and Virginia and North Carolina, who were powerhouses, came out and played in tournaments in the fall. And Denver all of a sudden rose up out of that.
Yeah.
Because they actually knock them off, from time to time. And now they're a national title contender year in, year out. I think it's a great idea. I think the reason why we haven't seen it is because of the timing of the calendar. You just mentioned, would you do it in September? Traditionally, I know you say year round, but that's why we haven't seen it. I don't think hockey does it either. Think of those pure winter sports,
Yeah, and full disclosure, I've never been at a school with a hockey or lacrosse team. I'm not that familiar with those.
Yeah, but it's probably because it's not opposite. You're starting in essentially practice and in late October and ending in April. And it's tough to squeeze in, but I'd be fine for it if we could find out on the calendar. And because I think it would improve. The key is it's not about us watching. It's not about the TV. It's about getting a better product when things do count. And I think you would see teams really adapt. I mean, think of those freshmen, that messy Duke team that took almost a full year to gel because of the freshmen. All of a sudden, they get those 6 games, or 8 games or whatever you did. I think they'd be a lot better out of the gate, and you'd see quality basketball at a very high level from some of the most high-level teams.
But I think one other thing that you haven't really brought up is what basketball does have during the summer. In many areas, you actually have summer leagues where you have, like, various teams that are set up that have, like, teams that have players from multiple colleges. Like I think that used to be the Devereaux Summer League in Cincinnati, for example. You could get players together for Xavier, Cincinnati, Miami, NKU.
Yeah, The summer league rules, and I think John Stalika might be more familiar, but you can't have, is it 3 or 4? You can't have more than 3 or 4 players from the same college on that team, which to me, I understand that from the point of, but it's like, I mean, how does that help you develop with your own team? I kind of like the idea of getting to play games with your own team. Nothing against the summer league. The Devereaux League is good, and all of them are good, and I know kids like playing in them, but that's playground ball. I mean, if you've ever watched those summer league games, whereas what I'm talking about is games with your team.
Well, let me
So I think that's the beauty of the summer league. If you're a Xavier fan, for example, where Jalen Reynolds would excel in an environment like that as a past example.
Yeah.
Let me throw the question over to Tytel. Do you have any thoughts on this idea of these more games like in September or something like that?
I am heavily against it. However, I think we'd have to keep it like light because like if that's the time for the kids to focus on basketball because they have some like December holiday tournament game like right before finals or something, like I want to let them get their school in. However, like I'm thinking of like a Penn or an Arizona, like if this is Penn's best chance to play like a Drexel or a Lehigh or Arizona scheduling antelopes, like I love the idea of using that as an excuse geographically to both build a rivalry and develop it and like not have to worry about fans going nuts, not for selling tickets, but just have these things where you can do like a day trip just logistically. I kind of like that idea.
I guess it kind of the reverse of that also though is, maybe a team like Arizona wouldn't play a regular season game against a team like the Lopes because they'll say, hey, I'll play you in that fall season if you really want to play a game. And so instead they go out and, they'd rather get a home game against, Florida A&M.
Well, Chad, I think they do that at their own peril, precisely because you want to go out, you want to schedule a solid out-of-conference schedule. If you do a bunch of RPI poison, that kills you if you're on the edge. That hurts you in seeding. That hurts you in bids. Hey, if teams are stupid enough, Syracuse, to do that, then they deserve what they get.
You read my mind there. I was going to mention Jim Boeheim when you were talking. Matt, I don't think we got your thoughts on the issue.
I'm actually against it because I know these guys are already playing in the summer and that, but like I don't want any more like high stress situations. And I think you're already seeing a lot of impact, like stress fractures, stress reaction injuries, as is from these kids playing too much when they're younger. Now, I don't want to add 6 more games to their slates, even if they're exhibition, whatever. Like the way college coaches are, they'll take them serious enough to where that 6 more heavy duty minutes, practice involved to get ready for these games and that. I'm good with it as is.
I don't know. Some coaches would. I think, Jim Boeheim would go out and play man-to-man defense in it and wouldn't care. But Greg Marshall would get ejected. So
yeah, and not every coach would do it. Like I know there are schools that don't do it for baseball. Like they just have inter-squad games. There's no rule that would say that you have to. It's not everybody uses the full 6. Not everybody plays Division I competition. It's all kind of like up to the coach and how they want to handle their what we would call an off season or a non-championship season. So if you didn't want to play, then you wouldn't have to. It's just I think that if it were allowed, teams would do it and teams would benefit from it.
Calipari and Krzyzewski would do it every year.
Yeah, they would. Yeah,
I think that's the clear cut. The people, and you'd be integrating the best players in college basketball, taking away a lot of their learning curve.
David, you mentioned playing non-D1 teams, and this is one of the topics that I want to pick up in terms of the actual scheduling and the season that we have.
Yes.
The way the rules work right now is teams are allowed to play up to 4 games during the regular season against non-D1 opponents. If you play a non-D1 opponent in an exhibition game, that counts as one of those 4. So should you play 2 non-D1 exhibition games, you only get 2 during the regular season. If you play a couple of close scrimmages for your exhibition games, you can have up to 4, which is utterly ridiculous when we see that many. Quite frankly, what I would like to see it done is you can have 3 non-D1 games, 2 of which have to be your exhibitions. If you don't use them for an exhibition, you can't. Otherwise, 1 non-D1 game if you really want to throw one in there, and that should be the limit in my opinion. But
Yeah, I suggested 2. I like your idea better, and what I like even more, it's 0.
well, I could see throwing one in there, though. Maybe it's just maybe for no other reason than you just can't fill out your schedule. You can't find a final game. But there's this, NAIA school down in Crowley's Ridge that's willing to come and play or whatever.
Right.
And you might have rivalry situations, and by rivalry I mean,
Chaminade, Hawaii.
Every year you're going to have Stetson play Alabama, or the
Stetson's Div 1, Joey.
Not Stetson, no.
Stillman.
Stillman, yeah.
Stillman in Tuscaloosa. They always are going to play cross-town rivalry. Yeah, to the degree it's a rivalry. That I don't mind that game. Yeah.
One's fine, and I kind of applaud the D2 teams that want to play up. But what drives me nuts every year, nails on a chalkboard, is you look at these schedules, and not particularly the high majors. This is more of an under-the-radar issue. And you look at these teams that claim they can find nobody to play them, so they had to schedule Division II teams. And there's 40-something teams making this claim.
Mm-hmm.
What is the obvious solution to that problem? And part of me wants to force these teams to actually play each other.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it.
They would actually have a full slate.
Yeah.
You look at a team like Stephen F. Austin. This is a named team. Last season, they played 3 non-D1 regular season games: Northeastern State, Centenary, and LSU Shreveport. And then you turn around and you want to claim, we couldn't get the opponents. Matt, maybe that's the problem. Was we're letting them play too many of these non-D1 games.
Yeah, I have a limit of 1 regular season. Okay, you do whatever, do your 2 exhibition, whatever, but only 1 in the regular season.
Titel, what are your thoughts?
I don't love the idea of having a limit. I want to let them do what they want to do. And again, I like the idea of keeping it festive against. I don't want to see Stillman on my schedule 7 times, but that's a good way to get the scrubs a little action, or maybe you sell the tickets for $1 each to encourage people to show up and watch your team. I kind of like the idea, from a old school rah-rah team standpoint.
But you get 2 exhibition games if you want. Why you can use them for that?
I would like a little more exhibition games.
Okay,
you want fans a chance to watch some more basketball.
I would like 6 in September.
Okay, we just circled back around. I guess on that note, we've actually gone about our full 30 minutes here. So let me run through each of you here and run through any of the thoughts that you've had about what we've seen since the Tar Heels cut down the nets through now, or anything else. Joby, let me start with you.
Well, I've seen the Tar Heels lose to the Virginia Cavaliers in the tennis championships.
Okay. What about the
They might be champions of the heart.
Gavitt.
David, are you okay? You're making noise.
Number 6, the Gavitt game.
Oh, number 6, the Gavitt game. Sorry, David, you want to talk to us about the Gavitt games?
Yeah, the matchups were announced. It was going to feed into my final thought. What are the Nice going, Chad.
Okay.
Ruined the whole. What are the matchup? Somebody name the matchup.
I know Marquette, Purdue, Illinois, DePaul. I think isn't Xavier, Wisconsin one?
Yes,
Yeah,
Xavier's going to Wisconsin, but you're also forgetting the big one where Tim Miles gets a spanking at St. John's this year.
That's going to be a big one. Here we are. Minnesota at Providence, Purdue at Marquette. Let me make sure I got the right ones here. Yeah, with Butler at Maryland, Creighton at Northwestern, Indiana at Seton Hall, Xavier at Wisconsin, Nebraska at St. John's, and the huge rivalry game of DePaul at Illinois.
Yes, and if it were Illinois at DePaul, the crowd would look pretty much the same.
But let me go. Let's see the final thoughts here, Matt.
Yeah, now we can move on to final thoughts.
Matt, let me turn to you.
I say this. We've talked to Arizona some, but I think this is really Sean Miller's chance. Assuming DeAndre Ayton makes it to school, that's still I'll kind of believe that one when I see it. But I'll assume for this case he is. He's back. Then you got Parker Jackson Cartwright. You got Trier. You got Alkins back. You got a couple of pretty good freshmen and wings in Brandon Randolph and Emmanuel Akot, who just reclassified. You got Dusan Vincic, I think a really underrated big guy. There is no reason why Arizona next year should not be competing for a national title and Sean Miller makes his first Final Four. This I don't totally believe in the fact he's underachieved, but if he doesn't make it next year with that roster, he's underachieved.
Okay. Titel.
Number one, we're not making the Final Four because we never do, even though we always should because we have a great recruiting class. Number two, I hope to be at Butler at Maryland on my birthday to bring in with the Hoops HD in-person press pass. Wish me luck.
Woohoo!
Lastly, I never thought I'd see this, but we're starting to see a trend of the transfer pipeline from the Ivy League to the Big 12 of all places. Like Kai Mason going from Yale to Baylor and Hans Brace from Princeton to Iowa State. What is going on?
Real quick note on that, but that's for a year from now. That's not for next year. That's for 18-19.
I was shocked, Titel, you didn't mention the fact that a team that lost by 44 points at home in the NBA is about to tie its Series 2-2. But
Don't jinx it.
let's see here. Sleeka, did we go to you yet?
Well, we've had some announcements as far as NCAA tournament sites that are going to be beginning with the 2018 tournament and going through 2022, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of sites that will be first-timers will be Colonial Life Arena in Columbia, South Carolina. Fort Worth, Texas is also going to be hosting in 2022. And also when the Chase Center opens in San Francisco, it'll be the first time in over half a century that they'll be playing regional games there. Although the one that hits a little bit close to home is going to be 2022 when the NCAA tournament will be coming back to Cincinnati at US Bank Arena. Although that comes with a little caveat that it's also contingent upon renovations being done to the arena downtown. But I just hope they don't go after the taxpayers when you consider how much of a bust that the tax deals have been in relation to the Reds and Bengals stadiums.
Well, David, I know you've been dying to make us your final thought here. It has something to do with the Gavitt games. You already teased us, so let's go ahead.
I have two. I'll get to that one in a second. The first final thought is the Showtime documentary Disgraced. It's about the what happened at Baylor under Dave Bliss. Amazingly, I watched it and it was incredible. I liked Dave Bliss even less after watching it than I did before I watched it. And John Titel, our colleague, interviewed, was it the director or the writer, John, or both?
I believe he is a producer director. I think he was just the director for this stuff.
Okay. It was a fantastic interview. Not that the other ones aren't fantastic, but this one was particularly fantastic. Be sure and check it out on the website. And the movie's actually very well done. Second, my thought here, we had the Gavitt games announced. The Big Ten ACC Challenge will be announced in the future. I would like to try and do everything in my power and get you to help me. We had a team in the Big Ten or in the ACC last year that was 11-7. Another team in the Big Ten that was 12-6. Very similar records. And there it is. Let's do this. Let's make it happen. Let's match up Maryland and Duke. Please. Who do we have to call? Who does this? Can we get Lee Del Vecchio to make this happen?
You have to work on that. Maybe we can.
Can we? I mean, really,
The
who
only problem,
else?
David, is that John and I will be fearing that a wildfire out of College Park will be shooting down.
I'm nowhere near
Win
college.
or lose. Win or lose.
Well, we'll be finding out if that's going to happen, which I seriously doubt in the next couple of weeks here, right?
Why wouldn't they match them up? Oh my God!
And I got to say, David, I do agree with you that Dave Bliss is probably the least liked person ever in college basketball, in my opinion.
Yes.
It was amazing. He actually had a job after the whole thing at Baylor went down, but after this documentary aired, needless to say, he no longer had that position. And I think it was some junior college in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Yeah. But and I even got to say, David, despite how much we dislike you, he was way worse than that even.
And then Art Briles is making a pretty strong run on the football side of things.
Oh yes. I think.
Baylor.
Yeah, John kind of covers all of the problems Baylor has had. I think they're actually going to be sued by Planet Earth tomorrow. Just everyone on Earth suing Baylor.
I was reading a editorial today suggests that Baylor just dump sports altogether, or at least dump football altogether.
Maybe they should just dump the university altogether.
But I guess at this point, we're kind of going totally off topic, but I do want to thank everyone for joining us on behalf of Matt Zukowski and Joey Fortson, John Teitel, John Salika, David Griggs. You guys were all in different spots earlier, but you moved around for some reason. I do want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be back again sometime in June with our June podcast with special guest Mark Hollis, right, David?
Yes, we have reached out to Mark about being on our show.
Yes, Mark Hollis will be here in June.
Yeah.
David has promised us. So on that note, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll talk to you again real soon.